A stillness envelopes the halls of schools once the final bell tolls. Silence that is not devoid but rich with remnants of laughter, hushed confessions, lingering by lockers' footsteps, resonating like thoughts left unspoken. The silence has always held a special place in my heart. In a previous chapter of my life, I embraced the role of an educator. Literature. I imparted lessons on metaphor and yearning, exploring the profound burden of timing's cruel hand. I once believed that the most profound drama unfolded within the confines of a novel's pages. Yet existence is far more chaotic and more subdued. It creeps in much like a dark stain on the pristine fabric of a white dirt. Allow me to introduce myself. Angela. I am 51 years old. For 23 years I have held the role of the principal's wife. James is a fine individual, seemed principal who recognizes each student by name and greets every parent with a firm handshake. He is cherished by educators and dreaded by those who flout the rules. We are a refined pair, the type that arrives at fundraisers with synchronized grins and departs before the last drop of wine is poured. All who gaze upon us proclaim, "You too are the epitome of perfection." Yet the reality, perfection resides in a solitary chamber, its doors firmly sealed. Began on a Thursday. The rain arrived ahead of schedule, heavy droplets drumming against the windows as I busied myself with the decorations for the senior banquet in the gym. The majority of the volunteers had departed. James found himself engaged in a call, discussing matters of budgets and the necessary approvals from the board. Hesitated. Have always done so. As I made my attempt to depart, it dawned on me that my umbrella remained behind in the office. The main building had already been secured. I lingered for a moment, enveloped in that unsettling after-school stillness. It was at that moment that I laid eyes on him. Miss, the custodian, perhaps 30, with a beard and a sturdy frame. Silence envelopes, urging you to lean in closer. He had embarked on this journey 6 months prior, spoke only when addressed, yet his eyes, they possessed a steadiness that caught my attention from the very first week. Eyes that perceive beyond the words they utter. "Are you locked out?" he inquired. His voice resonated with a depth that took me by surprise. As if one who chose their words with precision, I nodded, feeling a twinge of embarrassment wash over me. Umbrellas are located in the administrative wing. He retrieved a curing from his pocket. Countless tiny, metallic vows. I grasped the very one I required. Let's go. As we strolled down the corridor, the sound of my heels echoed sharply against the floor. His boots made no sound. He swung the door open and illuminated the room with a flick of the switch. As I entered the office, I reached for my umbrella. Yet I found myself pausing. He remained. He lingered in the threshold, a figure framed by the entrance, observing, not gazing with intent, not menacing, simply here, as if he were anticipating something I had yet to recognize. I was providing. "I once taught here," I remarked, seeking to break the silence. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I understand you are Mrs. Dalton." The way he pronounced my name, intentional, fully conscious, sent a shiver down my spine. A smile graced my lips. "Angela," I amended. A moment of stillness. "Angela," he echoed softly. It resembled a gentle caress. He advanced with a deliberate, measured step, kindly close, now excessively near. Yet I remained. Ill. I ought to have. Perhaps I should have simply walked by, offered my gratitude, and returned home to James. Yet I refrained. Something in his gaze revealed that he perceived the fractures I endeavored to conceal. The weary grin, the refined stance, the empty cavity, nestled just behind my ribs. He raised a hand, did not lay a finger on me, merely lingered in the air. Fingertips linger just beside my cheek, and then softly, with a forbearance that almost unraveled me, he cradled my face in his hands. His palm radiated warmth, his thumb brushed against my cheekbone. With my eyes shut tight, I embraced the darkness, not out of fear, yet from the pain of exposure. Truly observed, after a long stretch of time our lips never met. Not at that moment. He allowed his hand to drift downwards, retreated slightly. Exercise caution in the rain, he advised, and departed. I lingered in that place long after he had departed, gazing intently. The door, the lingering impression of his hand upon my skin remains vivid, a guide to a place I never realized I longed for. Had he kissed me, everything would have felt simpler. In that case I might have attributed it to a momentary whim regarding fervor in the shadow of a daring flame where recklessness ignites the heart. Yet he did not. He caressed my face as if it were something divine, and in some inexplicable way that felt even more unbearable. For now he resided within the confines of my mind. Those lips are not mine. This body does not belong to me. Simply the realm of my but. The following day I strolled through the corridors, envisioning him lurking in every shadow. He did not shy away from my presence, yet he did not come looking for me either. Felt as though he had presented me with a gift I was not yet prepared to accept. This moment he found himself in a state of anticipation, not beyond my threshold, yet within the depths of my stillness. Began to exit meetings prematurely, remaining in the courtyard as shifts transition, attuning my ears as the janitor's cart glides by. My gaze often drifted toward the door rather than the stage during school assemblies. As the sound of his keys reached my ears, the unmistakable jingle had become etched in my memory. My heart would quicken. What was I transforming into? On a particular afternoon I found myself lingering once more. There will be no banquet. There is no rain. Simply myself within the confines of the teacher's lounge, feigning the organization of tomes that remain untouched. The sound of the door creaking open reached my ears, failed to raise my gaze. There was no necessity. Before his presence came into view I sensed him. He lingered by the sink, filling a cup with water. Silence speaks volumes. Yet the atmosphere shifted, more compact, electrified. Last I raised my gaze. "Hello," I remarked. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. We lingered in that moment, two souls, feigning the essence of ordinary. We found ourselves not in that place. Not any longer. I made my way toward him. 3 steps. That was all it required to bridge the gap. He remained still. Not a single blink. He simply bided his time. The stillness returns once more, as if he understood that the universe would shift and mold itself to accommodate this very instant. "You've been on my mind," I remarked. The words flowed gently, truthful. He let out a breath, as if he had been suspended in a moment of anticipation for weeks. "I feel the same," he responded. No contact yet. There was no kiss, merely those 2 words, and all that they cherished departed before anything further could unfold. Yet the gaze he cast upon me as I moved beyond him, it was not a matter of longing. It was an understanding, and that filled me with a dread deeper than any affair ever could. This was not mere lust. It was acknowledgement. He beheld the woman I had confined for decades, yet he remained unyielding. He stood still. He remained in that very moment within the stillness wherein unvoiced sentiment began to flourish. Ceased to regard him merely as the janitor. Thomas had transcended mere job titles. He embodied an emotion, a chamber within my heart that ignited when the corridors faded into darkness, and I continued my stride toward it. Next conversation unfolded by chance. Perhaps it is destiny, teasing us with its elusive charm. In a moment of distraction, I left my scarf behind in the teacher's lounge. A rather foolish notion, to be honest. Yet I returned. There he stood by the window, cradling it as if it were a delicate treasure. First he kept his gaze downward. He gently traced his fingers along the. Upon catching sight of me, a smile spread across his face. But nearly filled with shame. I never intended to. You can keep it, I replied, perhaps a bit too hastily. We shared a laugh, yet lacked humor. It was a profound sense of relief. That evening's slumber eluded me. I revisited each moment, the way his gaze lingered on the scarf, the gentle motion of his thumb gliding over the fabric. It seemed as though he had reached out and made contact with me. Through it, brushed against a realm untouched for ages. The days melded into one another. The school seemed diminished in size. Each classroom brings us nearer. Each corridor echoes with life. Alas, the moment arrived. There are no longer any distances separating us. Never again will there be near misses. Our encounter took place in the dimly lit back storage room. Unfolded unexpectedly. Or perhaps it was destined, lurking beneath the surface of our being. The door shut quietly behind. Or the lights emitted a soft hum. He advanced toward me, deliberate and assured. I stood my ground once more. His hand moved toward my face. This time, I embraced it fully. And when he kissed me, it felt like a gentle invitation. Was a moment of reflection, as if we had traversed this path countless times in dreams that remained unspoken between. My fingers brushed against his shirt, hands trembling, the heartbeats with fervor. When our bodies intertwined, there was an undeniable certainty, without any facade, only warmth, desire, and this intolerable gentleness lurking beneath it all. The aftermath, silence enveloped us. We simply took a seat, pawn crates. Inhale, exhale, attuning to the symphony of life beyond the threshold, the realm to which we no longer held any claim. Had a thought I wished to express, to articulate its essence, to encapsulate. Yet he cast his gaze upon me and offered a subtle shake of his head. Not speak its name, he murmured. Yet I refrained. Perhaps there are certain things that exist beyond the reach of names, merely experienced and recalled. As I made my way back home that night, I found myself enveloped in an inexplicable silence. James had succumbed to slumber. The gentle illumination from the hallway light painted elongated shadows across the walls of our bedroom. I shed my garments, positioned myself before the mirror, and regarded my reflection as if I were an unfamiliar observer. Invisible fingerprints lingered in the air, unnoticed by all. It remains warm, endlessly remaining. The following morning, I slipped into the blue blouse that James had remarked made me appear presentable. He pressed a kiss to my cheek, his attention divided as he fumbled for his keys and scrolled through emails. He remained oblivious to the fact that my coffee sat untouched. My gaze was fixated solely on the door. oblivious to everything else around me. Thomas failed to make the call. He refrained from putting pen to paper. Yet, as I walked by him in the corridors, our eyes exchanged stories that only we understood. And at times, as the bell tolled and the final student vanished from sight, we exchanged glances, a silent inquiry lingering between us, one neither of us dared to voice once more. I ceased my involvement in volunteering for events, ceased the habit of lingering after hours. And yet, I found myself present whenever he was. In a fleeting moment, as I stood in the parking lot, my eyes were drawn to the reflection of myself captured in the polished surface of his truck window. The principal's wife was not in my line of sight. I beheld a woman, her cheeks flushed, breath suspended, embodying a blend of sorrow and yearning. James observed that I had changed. He inquired on one occasion whether I was feeling unwell. I agreed. He presented an array of vitamins. There are no inquiries. With a spark of inspiration, I set my pen to paper. Versus correspondence I would keep to myself. Some were directed to an empty void, some for Thomas, entirely my own. I poured my heart onto the pages, uncovering emotions I hadn't realized lingered within me. Today I longed to grasp his hand, yet I refrained. Instead, I etched his shadow into my memory. Today I strolled by him, and it was akin to passing a flame I dared not ignite once more. Particular night James reached out to me. While we lay in bed, I remained steadfast, unwilling to retreat. Yet I remained still, not advancing toward. My body acquiesced. My spirit drifted gently above the worrying ceiling. Fan observing disengaged. Zit concluded. He pressed his lips gently to my forehead before rolling away. Remained alert throughout the night. Palm rests against my heart as though attempting to silence a name I was forbidden to utter. Thomas never compelled me to make a choice. Never uttered the words, "Leave him." Never uttered the words, "Come with me." With each moment of his silence, the cacophony within me grew ever more intense. I was not merely betraying my husband. I was betraying a version of myself that I had outgrown. And in that delicate space between obligation and longing, a woman I hadn't encountered in years began to stir to life, extending, recollecting the sensation of desire to be desired. She made a choice to find her place in the world. The conclusion arrived quietly, devoid of any explosive confrontation. There were no packed bags waiting by the threshold, no heartfelt revelations marred by tears. Arrived silently, as is often the case with many. Truth. One morning I found myself in the garden, a space that James seldom acknowledged. The jasmine was in full bloom, its fragrance heavy in the air, reminiscent of a distant memory. My grasp lay Thomas's scarf, a lingering token of our past. I had never found the moment to return it, uncertain if it still held a place in his memory. Yet I did, and that sufficed. James emerged, cradling 2 cups of coffee in his hands. One was intended for me. Oblivious to the fact that I had long since given up the habit, he took a seat next to me. "You seem to have drifted away to another place recently," he remarked. I did not refute it, did not feign. I gazed at him. This man with whom I had shared 2 decades. This man who cherished a version of myself that I had long since outgrown. And I remarked, "I'm endeavoring to recall who I was prior to belonging to anyone." He remained silent, merely nodding. Perhaps he grasped the meaning. Perhaps he did not. Perhaps for once it was of no consequence. The following day I chose not to attend school. I ventured to the lake, the place Thomas alluded to in a fleeting remark. He mentioned he fished there during his childhood. Perched on the dock, my bare feet dipping into the cool water, as the pages of my poems danced gently in my lap, a shadow intertwined with my own did not turn. There was no necessity. He settled next to me, silent, recognizable, for an extended period. Silence enveloped us. The stillness that enveloped us was far from void. The space was brimming, concerning recollection of pain, of potential. Not requesting that you belong to me, he stated. Understand. Yet I sincerely wish for you to embrace your own essence. That lingered in my mind long after the sun had set. Much time passed since the wind whisked my scattered pages over the shimmering surface of the lake. After a fortnight I took my leave. There is no scandal, without any theatrics, a mere structure that had lost its essence of home, accompanied by a suitcase that now contained only the essentials of significance. A letter was pinned to James expressing gratitude for the years shared, for the version of myself that he cherished. And in pursuit of clarity I set out to discover the woman who had outgrown that particular version of herself. I chose not to move in with Thomas. I settled into a cozy apartment by the serene lake. Once more, I delved into the realm of literature, guiding minds through its intricate landscapes, engaged in the craft of writing daily, and occasionally when the sky donned a particular hue of twilight, he would rap gently at the door. There are no inquiries, free from anticipation, merely two hands cradling books, or perhaps bread, or even the stillness of silence, and I would grant him entry for the simple reason that I desired to, not out of obligation, held the esteemed position of the principal's wife. I was the woman who chose to remain silent, who smiled at just the right moment, who traversed the hallways like a specter. However, at this moment I stand as the woman who has embraced her own. In that moment she embraced all that she believed had slipped away from her grasp.